panel is, and you can go in whatever order you'd like. But if you could just share a little bit more about your journey with us, what's the process that you've been on over the years that has led you towards this agnostic or atheist worldview? And could you just, yeah, describe a little bit of where you are right now, any stories, any experiences, any moments that come to mind that have led you to this place?
This always happens to me. I end up going first. And everybody's like, okay, that was interesting. Okay. So I identify as an atheist, a Mennonite atheist. And becoming an atheist wasn't something I had planned on being. Growing up, I was very much concerned about my relationship with God. And you know how people say, if I ever stray from you or deny you, just take me home, Lord. So that was my thought many times growing up. I'm 52 now, and so it's only been in the last 10 years or so that I identified as agnostic. And then in the last couple of years, I've been comfortable identifying as an atheist. From a very young age, I was often in conflict with what it meant to be a Christian or a Mennonite. When I was 4, I decided I wanted to be an actor and moved to Hollywood. My conservative grandparents, conservative Mennonite grandparents, warned me that if I did that, the devil would get me.
Mm.
I was encouraged to be a pastor instead. Uh, in junior high and high school, it was a Mennonite junior high and high school. I liked a lot of things that were considered ungodly or satanic or blasphemous, like rock music, horror films, Monty Python. The Last Temptation of Christ it came out when I was in high school, and everyone in the church saying, "Oh, it's a blasphemous film. Don't go see that." I wanted to see it. Unfortunately, it never came to my hometown in Virginia, so I had to wait till it came out on VHS, and I immediately went to the video store and rented it. Also, I was into the Rocky Horror Picture Show, so I was very interested in sexuality, different kinds of sexuality. I believed women were equal to men and that they could be pastors. Uh, the first woman ordained as a pastor in the Virginia Mennonite Conference wasn't until like 1989, something like that. Um, I believe that LGBTQ Mennonites should be affirmed by the church. As an actor, I had met gay men and lesbians, and I wanted to be part of our church. And I was often told, "Oh, they're sinners; they can't be a part of our church." And I got called names. "Oh, if you like gay people, you must be gay too." And it was very, it hurt. But I wish I would have said more, but I was afraid of being called names and things like that. I didn't believe men were the head of the home. I believed women were equal to men. And I didn't believe abortion was inherently evil. I never took the Bible literally. Oh, and by the way, related to that, I often was, a lot of popular evangelical leaders like Dr. James Dobson and Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson were very popular in the church. And I didn't like them. And yeah, and now that James Dobson died last year, and people were coming out saying how his teachings hurt them, especially if you're gay, if you're a woman, children. I was hurt by his parenting techniques on disciplining children, and so yeah, I couldn't put my finger on it at the time, except that he didn't like gay people. He thought women were supposed to be subordinate. But anyway, I never took the Bible fully literally. Even in high school, I was writing parody sketches of Bible stories. The Bible felt very mythological to me. It was meaningful. I mean, the life of Jesus is very meaningful, but it's not the Word of God. And yet, I was deeply involved. I think I was involved in my local Mennonite church, my home church, because I felt safe there. I was accepted. So I was involved in the youth group. I was baptized at 15. They encouraged us to get baptized as teenagers. So a number of my friends and I were baptized on the same Sunday. Uh, they had a youth representative on the worship planning committee, and I was a part of that. And I was just as I was reading this again this morning, I was thinking it might be a good idea for this church to invite a youth member to join the worship planning committee.
Mm.
So I was active in church, but I still felt like an outsider. After high school, I worked in a Christian theater. It was my first paid acting job. And it was also one of the most uncomfortable spiritual experiences of my life. They brought in, it was a very charismatic organization, Pentecostal, and they invited a like self-proclaimed prophet to come in and prophesy over people. Very weird.
Mm.
And then people would see demons everywhere, and they'd see demons on my cast members. Like, there's a demon on him, and they prayed the demon away, and every day was a constant battle between God and Satan, and with the theater being the center of that battle. And often I had heated arguments with my fellow castmates on the issues I already mentioned, homosexuality, uh, whether women should lead, whether evolution was real. And it was just a very uncomfortable experience. And also note that there was never any discussion about Jesus wanting us to help the poor.
Mm.
Even in the show is about Jesus, it's the life of Jesus, from his baptism to his death and resurrection. And there was no talk about poverty. There was a song it was a musical. There was a song about the year of Jubilee. And there was no mention about forgiving debts or
Mm.
releasing slaves. It was all about being released from spiritual bondage.
If you'll take maybe just 1 minute left for
Okay,
the sake of time.
all
Thanks,
right.
David.
So by the end of those 3 months, I wanted to distance myself from Christianity. That's when I started reading more liberal books on biblical criticism and the historical Jesus. And the biggest turning point for me was when I became a dad. Uh, when my daughter was born, I could no longer believe in a God who sends people to hell. I was kind of skeptical about that anyway, but it still weighed on me. So as many of you know, your parents don't want to hurt your child. You know, there's nothing they could do to lose your love. You don't punish them. You don't torture them when they do something that hurts you or makes or hurts your feelings or causes you physical pain. Since we're our presser time, I'm gonna put my time to Eric.
Yeah, it's hard to know, this is a long story, right? So editing out like parts that are uh tangible, salient, important. I think one thing for me is I've been going this direction, kicking and screaming. It's been really alienating of myself to myself. I never really wanted to move towards agnosticism or something like that. And like, I taught at APU, I have a doctorate in theology, all these different things, right? Like, it's just felt really unsettling, unclear. Like, I'm like, why am I here, right? Like, so that's been something that I'm still kind of processing through and trying to figure out. And like, trying to name some of these moments in history of what sort of is and how I've been here.
Mm.
So one thing, just in terms of naming, I've sort of like been dappling for a couple of years with the idea of calling myself a secular Mennonite. I think that's something that we can all grapple on. Like we've heard of like secular Jews and things. Like that's a really tangible thing where I think that really fits for how I'm kind of feeling about it. Like this connection to this Anabaptist story and history, but also some like, yeah, dissonance to it, right? Some critical push against it. I think a couple of things that have pushed me to this place, which it kind of felt like I forget who the quote is, but it's a little bit, and then it's all the way, right? Like um, that's kind of how it felt. And some of the little bits were, um, I think Trump being elected the first time.
Mm.
I'm still angry about that, and I'm still angry about how much Christianity had to do with that. There's a good chance that I still believe in God, and I'm just so pissed that I'm not talking to that person anymore. I'm open to that as like an understanding of myself. I'm still trying to feel that out a little bit. Um, but also there's these moments, I think, particularly when people invoke something like God said or God did, that makes me so angry. That, God did this in my life or that, and yet there's a fucking genocide going on. Where's God in that? That these little things, God answer these prayers, or we purport that God answers these prayers. But in the big things, so I think that's part of the internal sorrow and confusion with some of this stuff. I think there's also, for me, an aspect of when my grandmother died. There's a way my experiences of Christianity have always minimized death. It's okay, you're going to see your grandmother again one day. You're going to see that person again one day. None of us know what happens after we die, right? We can say that we hope things or we have faith in things, but we don't know. I don't know how to grieve my grandmother and other people that have been lost in a way that, like, if I'm going to see them again, it feels like it cheapens the loss or something. I don't know quite how to unpack that. But especially when some people are so certain, like, oh, this death thing's not a big deal. We're gonna see them in heaven. All this kind of stuff. Man, that hurts to hear that. Um, Especially the arrogance of that kind of a claim when we don't know. I sure hope those things are true. I want to be wrong. And I think that's the third thing is sort of, I think in my life, I've been moving a lot towards uncertainty and sort of owning uncertainty and being comfortable and uncomfortable with it, but just trying to let it be a louder voice and one that I'd rather was a quieter voice. That I don't know. So I don't identify as an atheist. I think I sort of lean that way of like I'm kind of like I don't know. Maybe there's probably not a God. I don't know. I'm not even sure that's the right question sometimes. Um, but yeah, so it's complicated. So I'll stop there.
Right, where to start, right? So I grew up Mennonite. I grew up in Chicago, going to church every week. And I even went to Mennonite summer camp in the summers. And I think it was summer camp where we were really encouraged to like make some sort of commitment or statement, right? And so at some point I, called my parents into the room and told them I had accepted God into my heart. And then, and they, that was great. And then I feel like over time, instead of some sort of break, that just it started to feel less and less relevant to my life. It started to feel less and less real or true. And I can't even really identify any particular instances or markers, or I think secular life was just 95% of my life, and going to church on Sunday was, 5% or something. And so making a statement of faith ceased to feel like it was really part of my life. You know, yeah. So faith itself felt like this plant or blooming flower or something that was real for me at some point as a child, and then gradually kind of just withered away until one day it was like put in a scrapbook, and that was like part of childhood and not part of my adult life. But that wasn't a huge wrestle for me, actually. That which I almost feel bad saying. But it wasn't really a huge wrestle. It was just like that was then, this is now. And I ceased to find that like I don't know, a relevant question to my day-to-day existence. There are many other much more relevant and pressing questions about how to live life. Um, but the actual faith of is there a God ceased to feel relevant. I'm going to pause there because I want to leave more time for the what I'm excited about part. So I'm going to pause there.
Well, I just wanted to see, thank you for sharing all of you, and we can see some overlaps, but also some differences too in what you've already shared. I'm wondering, one of the questions was related. The next questions was just how do you feel about this journey? And some of you have touched on that, but if any of you wanted to share any more words about what this has felt like for you, I'm hearing yeah. Well, I'll just let you share if you wish to share more, and pass it along if not.
So how am I feeling right now? Aside from realizing I'm on my own and that no one's bailing me out, there's no one to pray to, I don't feel spiritually different than I did when I was younger. And what I feel is actually relief, relief from worrying about the afterlife, relief from the belief that angels and demons are battling over my soul, or God and Satan are fighting, whatever, and relief from trying to reconcile theology with suffering. I was always thinking, you know, if there's a God, he's supposed to be loving and all powerful. Why are there holocausts? Why are there genocides? Why are the people in extreme poverty? And so I came to believe that our problems, violence, oppression, poverty, ecological collapse, are all human problems. And if they're human problems, then they require human solutions. No divine intervention is coming. It's up to us. And that might sound bleak, but for me, it's empowering. It means responsibility. It means solidarity. It means community matters more, not less. And then I'll go into more of that in the next question.
Yeah, I think I've already sort of answered this, but I was just thinking about how a couple of years back when I was sort of really having to confront this initially, I would have these funny moments where I would start praying, and then the internal monologue would start, be like, "Hey God, dude, what are you doing? You don't think there's a God? Oh yeah, but I need like some emotional support right now. Yeah, okay, but there's not a God, right? Well, what are you doing in your head there? Well, but I don't have anything right now, and I don't know what practices to use to sort of feel like this loss and this sense of desperation, aloneness. Yeah, well, we got to find something else, man. Like just these internal monologues, and it would happen at least once a day, right? Where I would just sort of notice this moment of like prayer and then going through this whole thing again. And that was just, again, one of the themes for me is just this like almost getting to know myself again in these weird ways that have been confusing. And that's been one of them where like even the internal monologue has been hitting up against things where I'm like, wow, yeah, I don't know what I think anymore in that moment. And then and attached to that, like, I don't know what I'm feeling in this moment too. Like that can feel yeah, unmooring and all those sorts of things. So like, yeah, I don't know that I felt the bleakness as much. Like I totally resonate with that. I've felt that about other things, about climate change and things like that. But this hasn't felt bleak so much as like confusing, I think. So
Well, right now it just feels like outing myself. Hope y'all still love me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because it was a long-term thing, it was somewhat less full of friction for me because it was a long-term, just sort of like falling off the bandwagon. Um, but I loved your term secular Mennonite, and I'm maybe prepared to take that. Um, I also love something that Tyler said, which was Zenonite. because I have lately picked up a meditation practice that I'm finding very helpful. And your talk about the internal monologue, you know, to me it feels very grounding and very real to try to be in touch with my own thoughts. It feels much more genuine and authentic than trying to communicate with like an outside force, right? Because yeah, trying to figure out myself feels like a genuine journey, whereas prayer feels like trying to communicate with something beyond. And if I don't know if there's anything beyond, that feels inauthentic to me. So yeah, lately meditation has just felt much more authentic.
Thank you. I can hold on to that actually. My last question is just observing all of you are really involved in the life of our community in one way or the other. You're not lingering at the edges, kind of checking out church. And so I'm wondering what has kept you coming back and connected with PMC, and then how has it felt to remain connected to church as someone who identifies as agnostic or atheist or secular Mennonite? What keeps you connected? Yeah.
I have so much to say on this one. Um, for me, church feels fundamentally about shared values and like doing life together. It feels, it's so much about community. And I feel like whether we agree on the finer theological points or not, like if we want the same things in the world, if we have this shared project for what the world should look like and what life should look like, that actually, I don't even know why I'm crying. That feels much more grounding in reality to me than any theological point, really. And in secular modern life, I have found no match for the church in terms of doing life together. Like, I think that the word community is so overused right now. Like, that word is everywhere. And I think it's because people need it and because people crave it and don't really have it, that the word is everywhere. You could go to a one-off event and they're like, we're here to build to community. And you're like, that's nice. I'm never going to see you again. We can build community for an hour and then like, I know I'm never going to see you people again. So to me, it is so important to have this space where we commit to seeing each other every week, and commit to doing all the things that make life, joyful. Um, you know, that's why I love being on congregational life, because potlucks and baby showers and, all of those things I feel like are what really do ground a real community together.
Why I remain connected to PMC is because this community understands something crucial, that even if we disagree on theology, we agree that the work matters. From feeding and housing people, justice, peacemaking, showing up for one another. Many here believe in a literal God and a supernatural Jesus. I don't, but I see a shared commitment to doing the work, not waiting for rescue, but participating in healing. That's what keeps me here. And if this church wasn't here, I wouldn't be going to church at all. I mean, I really like Katarina's leadership and how the church is right now. Maybe it hasn't always been like this, but as long as Katarina's here, I think.
No pressure.
Yeah, yeah. As soon as you're leaving, I'm out.
Uh-oh.
I don't believe in the supernatural anymore, but I believe in community. And I believe that want the world to change, we have to do it together. And PMC is one of the places where I see that happening.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat everything they said, although they're all absolutely right on. But another thing is we're doing this right now here. We're getting to be our authentic selves up here. And you guys, I know that this is a place that this feels safe. Uh, whatever it is, right? Like, yeah, this is, you all are some of my best friends and closest connections in the world. And you shape my life. You shape my children's lives. You shape Emily's life. And I need that. I want that. And I want all of your voices to be a part of my story, my existence. So, like, what else is there? I don't mean that in a flippant way, but just like, even as I find myself changing, I feel home here. I feel connected here. I remember when Emily and I first came here, that was one of the things that we said when we joined the church was this feels like home. We had been like bouncing through all these different like home churches and all these different things that were like intense community and all these, it was great and it was formative and it was painful. And then we got here and it was like, oh man, and it still feels like home. And yeah, there is all the social justice work that, yes, let's keep pushing on that and learning and extending. And this is one of my primary places of being involved in this hope of trying to make the world a slightly better place, whatever that means. But yeah, and then I'll repeat it again. Like, I want my children to grow up with all of you having voices in their lives. That is so important, and you all are so important in the midst of that. So.
I'll go ahead and take the mic. Okay. Well, I just want to say to all of you that we love you. We claim you, if you'll claim us. And that, we heard the metaphor of the journey, which maybe is overused, but in the Jacob story that Jacob was on this journey and was interrupted and sidetracked. And I hear some of that in some of your stories. And none of us have arrived. There's not kind of this, oh, we got it together. We are believers and then there are unbelievers, but there's a journey of faith. And I want to think of that faith as a large umbrella or tent maybe that can hold a lot.
Sorry, what?
A spectrum of difference. And will you journey with us? And will you also help us to be our authentic selves? Because I see that up here as well. And what you've shared takes vulnerability and courage. So thank you. And let's turn now to hear your responses and your questions. Just take a moment of silence to sit with what you've heard, and we'll take about 5 minutes, and I'll pass the mic around for questions for those who are up here. And actually, I think we might have a song in between that'll allow you to ponder. Is that right, Marilyn? So we'll go ahead and hear this song, ponder any questions or reflections, and then we'll take a few minutes to pass the mic after the song.
To see everybody.
Thank you, Maddie. Would you like this one? And maybe we'll take just one or two responses so we have more time for reflections.
So, Maddie, it's good to hear your voice. I haven't seen you in years. I remember when she was really little. So anyway, yeah, I got bullied a lot growing up, so I became very introverted. It was safe just to stay in my room and daydream. I developed a very strong inner life where I spent a lot of time daydreaming about my goals and my future, and then also praying. And for years, I was in constant prayer. I'd be walking down the street, I'd be praying, and or meditating. And then a few years ago, after all, I was just developing the idea that there wasn't a God. Everything I believed about God was just a theory. It was my imagination. So I decided to think about how would I feel, how would my life feel if I believed that everything was my imagination. everything I thought about God was just my imagination. Hearing God's voice, feeling God's direction in my life was just my imagination, and that I had to solve my problems on my own. That God wasn't there to help me out, and I didn't feel any different. I felt the same, and because I never felt alone. Like I'd be alone, I'd be in my apartment by myself for days on end. I never felt alone, and I thought that was God, but it's actually just my imagination being comfortable in my solitude. So that's what I would say is that it is your imagination, at least for me. That's what I think.
For me, prayer is fundamentally a social experience. Um, Kind of like singing hymns are a social experience. You know, it's a group experience. And I've really never had what feels like a one-on-one personal dialectical prayer relationship with God. I feel like if and when I've ever experienced God, it's with other people, um, and not by myself. And so I think, I think that it's okay to me that I don't have that because it's not something that I've lost. It's something I've never experienced.
I man, there's so many thoughts about that. It's such a good question. I immediately bristle at the language of personal relationship with God. This feels so evangelical of my own history. I don't know if it is evangelical. Maybe other traditions use it, but it just feels that way from my own history. Um, and I don't know how to break apart. uh, I've been through quite a few different spaces where I felt manipulated by churches, particularly around music and worship. Um, we had a friend when I was at Fuller who was a drummer, and he would always say, "I can get everyone's hands up. Just wait, I'll do it at this song at this moment." And he would get everyone's hands up, right? Because there is a power in music, right? And there's a thing that's going on there. But then the spiritualizing of, oh no, that's God's spirit or something, right? Like I don't know how to break that stuff apart. I really, this moves into the uncertainty. I don't want to say much for anyone else except for me and my own history. Like I don't know how to break apart the like ways where I feel manipulated in sort of talking about my relationship with God and having some of my own feelings of like, man, maybe that was just me in my head talking to myself. I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't want to say anything normative about it as much as like, yeah, I probably need to do some more therapy to figure that one out a little better.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Maddie, for joining us. We'll take a few more responses or questions.
Hi, Maddie and Margie. It's Hope. Hi, everyone else too. Hi, beautiful panel. Wow. So a little higher so I can see more people. But many of you may remember my son when he was 8, taking the mic and saying, uh, he said, "I feel uncomfortable because I don't believe in God and I don't believe anything you just said." And I don't remember who was speaking that day. I wonder if one of you do. But I know the next person that took the mic was Glory. And I remember Yuna coming and just like burying him in mother love. And maybe in my mind, like 14 people came and surrounded him and like held him. And I don't know how many people, but maybe it was just me and Yuna. Um, and Glory just sharing when I have doubts and opening, continuing what he opened, but like inviting the precious, painful space that he was so bravely sharing with our community. And just as a mother with very complex situation in my life and my kids' lives. Um, my gratitude is an endless well for this body of people right here. And a couple months ago, it was the second time at 15, he took the mic and said, "If you're wondering, I feel the same way." So that's 7 years later, and thank you. Thank you to this community, and thank you for being vulnerable, for sharing, and I love you.
Hi, I'm Jean. I want to thank the panel for just making space for what you made space for because it's very emotional for me because I could relate to all of your stories and even like the demons and all that. Some of that stuff can just be very damaging and scary, and it can be something that makes you feel not worthy, and it's confusing because who is God? What is this relationship? If he's so mad at me or if it's so precarious. And never in my life have I been amongst Christians where this was a conversation that could be had, period. So I'm feeling the cognitive dissonance like, am I going to get in trouble? It feels kind of scary. And that's one of the things that I love about this place is that these kinds of conversations can be had and that we are all equally loved regardless of where we're at on this journey. And it is a journey and we don't know and it's all over the place. And there's a lot of unpacking and deprogramming to do from some of the abusive practices that we've had or experienced as people growing up in fundamentalist kind of situations. And it just, for me, it's taken years and years of unpacking and deprogramming and letting go. And I guess I just have never really given myself permission to just feel that sorrow, like you were saying, Eric. Like there's real sorrow in that because it was really confusing and difficult. So thank you for being so open and for everyone here. I know we're all on this journey together. So thank you for welcoming me and thank you for opening your hearts today. Thank you for that. Thank you, Katerina.
Thank you so much, Kylie.
I resonated a lot with the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years. Steve and I have gone through tons of deconstructive conversations. And I guess a question I have for you, Eric, in particular, I resonated with a lot of those like meaning of life and all these different painful questions. I think one of the beautiful things in it, in me doing this process with Stephen, is that we've been at a point of understanding each other the whole way. I think to be understood and to be known is like, it's so valuable here. And I think currently Steve and I are in slightly different places, but we understand where we're at. But just kind of wondering, how has where you've landed with your like worldview and framework with God in a different place than he used to be, or where she is or is not. How has that affected the way you make decisions, your relationships? Because at least to us, it was so fundamentally a part of everything we've done and who we are. So yeah, how does the way you process things now and the relationships you have now, I don't know, how has that changed? Maybe a little bit.
Thank you, Kylie.
I don't know. I I'm hesitant because I don't know how much permission I have from Emily to say what, right? Um, yeah, right. Until I, yeah. I think historically we've felt really lucky that we've moved from evangelicalism together through deconstruction together out into like liberal Christianity. And then maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, give or take, like it did start being a little bit less the same. Like, sort of, not even like there were ways where everything felt parallel lines, and now the lines just don't feel parallel, right? Like they just kind of feel like they're off in all kinds of directions. Um, and I think sometimes that elicits a lot of fear, for sure, of like, yeah, like, is the relationship going to be able to hold this? Um, and, like, it's never a given that we're going to stay married the rest of our lives. Uh, thanks, Melba. It's just not, right? Like, I hope we do. I'm not saying anything. Right, like it doesn't have to be the case, right? And so holding that more openly, like trying not to clutch it, like in my fear response of like, oh, like clamp down, right? Instead of like sort of opening up to curiosity or like, man, your journey is a little different than mine, and having that be a moment of connection rather than disconnection. I have a lot of trust that we can sort of have a relationship of trust and of authenticity and openness, even if we're kind of wandering off in different ways. It creates new stresses and new like needs of communication, but I don't know. And I wonder if maybe it's always kind of been there, but like particularly as we've come out of like patriarchal histories and stuff, like Emily's family still thinks I'm in charge, right? Like, yeah, it's like, well, what is it? Well, I'm gonna ask Emily. Well, I can't ask Emily. You're in charge. I'm like, what is this, right? And so that's been an unpacking as well of like, there's so much patriarchy involved in our tradition of Christianity that a lot of people here are really wrestling with in beautiful ways and trying to figure that out. But particularly within this like history of what is a family, what is a relationship defined in these particular ways that aren't even really biblical, right? We just talked about Jacob's two wives. Um, I'm just saying. Um, but they're definitely deeply cultural, right? And so I don't know, there's so many things to unpack there. So that's my long, short answer.
Thank you, Eric. Well, let's give our panelists a hand and you can continue to share afterwards. Thank you all. And I know there is more responses and questions perhaps, but I imagine they'll make themselves